Good evening, everybody, and those viewing at home. Planning Control Committee, 13th November 2025 at 6 p.m. I do apologise for the lateness. We've just been going through a few legalities on 4 of the applications to be considered. I will defer over to Paul for the explanation of this when I come to that. I'll put this in at late items, so it might be an early night for us all. So there you go. So apologies. I've got one from Councillor Amin, and Councillor Prosser hasn't turned up as well. Is it?
I think he may be a bit late.
Late. Okay. Well, he might miss the meeting by the looks of it. So we go to item 2, late items. Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me do item 8.1 first, which is land to the rear of 10 to 29, the Hollow Mickleover. There's been considerable discussion this week concerning the status of the draft local plan, which members will be aware, and importantly, the Weight Planning Committee can apply to its policies and specifically allocations going forwards. To that end, we have instructed Council to provide a clarifying opinion that will help not only this application, but future applications, future proposals, and, of course, the weight that we as decision makers should apply in the decision-making process. This is particularly relevant to new housing proposals, and therefore, with Chair's agreement, we've decided to withdraw this application, so that's the Hollow Mickleover, withdraw it from this agenda with a view to bringing it back to the December meeting when we will have the clarifying opinion from our barrister. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Do you want to go through the other 3 as well that we've just been discussing?
And then, due to the late start, we were discussing the items 8.2, which is 183 Brighton Road, which was called to committee by Councillor Graves. Now, the Constitution suggests that the person or the councillor who calls the application to committee should attend the meeting to represent their views, and in the absence of Councillor Graves, the Constitution suggests that the application should be returned back to officers for a delegated decision. So, on item 8.2, 183 Brighton Road, I am sorry for the speakers who have arrived, but we don't have the councillor speaking in opposition, so the application is delegated back to officers for a decision. There were 51 objections. I am so sorry, in which case that needs to stay on the...
Okay.
Although we don't have Councillor Graves in opposition. Thank you, Jenny.
Yep.
We had a very similar occurrence with Gladstone Close, which again was called in by Councillor Graves. And this one, in the same manner, should be referred back to officers for a delegated decision in the absence of Councillor Graves, who called the application in. I don't think there's another reason why it's before committee.
Yeah, come in, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bolton may be able to assist me as well, because she's a long-standing member of this committee over the years, and so am I. I'm not quite sure that this has ever happened if the councillor doesn't appear for whatever reason, that it's deferred back to officers. That might be constitutionally correct, but is that something that you decide as a chair, or is it a default position? Because I'm sure that in those circumstances we go ahead and consider the item on the agenda as a committee. It's just a procedural point. I just can't recall this happening before.
It has actually happened before, on more than one occasion, I remember. You're correct that ultimately the Chair has discretion to allow it, but I mean, as Paul says, that's what the Constitution says in terms of delegations. I mean, anything can come to the committee irrespective of the what is in the referral remit in the Constitution. But ultimately, as I say, you have a situation where the referral hasn't been met, but it's still discretionary on the chair. So if you want to try to persuade the chair, you're welcome to do so.
I will leave it up to the chair. I just wanted to check. Maybe that my gaps when I was a cabinet member, maybe that happened, but unless I've got a bad memory, I can't recall me being on a committee and that happening.
Carry on, Paul.
That's Gladstone. Gladstone. Yes. So on Gladstone Close, we had 14 objections and 23 in support, which still doesn't mean it needs to come to committee, because given that 15 is the threshold. The only reason it was coming to committee was Councillor Graves calling the application to committee. So Gladstone should be, subject to Chair's agreement, delegated back to officers.
Just for clarification, are there any speakers for that item to hear tonight?
For the application, yes.
For the application,
yes.
Right? Not objecting.
Not objecting, no.
And the proposal is to grant anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for clarity and for the speaker's benefit, Gladstone Close is referred back to officers for decision making, because the threshold and the councillor who called it in is not attending. Thank you. Moving to Merchant Street, this was referred to committee by Councillor Repton, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Repton gave his apologies, couldn't attend, but asked us to take into consideration at the meeting his objection, which he made during the planning process. So I think through you, Chair, I think you've agreed that we will continue with that one at this meeting.
Sorry, Chair, what's the difference? It seems like we're just picking and choosing now which ones we want to listen to and which one we don't. I mean, I understand the process in terms of Councillor Graves not being here, but there were only 2 objections off this committee having to hear that tonight, regardless of Councillor Graves being here or not. So why are we now picking and choosing Councillor Repton's to say that we will still hear that? And how many objections were registered for the application you're just referring to now, Paul, out of curiosity? So just to come back on that then, so we're picking to hear an application with 11 objections and no councillor who's called it in, yet we're choosing not to hear an application with 14 objections and no councillor here who's called it in. I think it's silly, to be honest. I don't think it's a good look at all. I think we either hear them both or we don't hear either.
I think through you, Chair, we have to look at what the Constitution says. And the Constitution is clear that if we come to committee if there's 15 or more objections to an application and or it's called in by a councillor, but that councillor must come along to the meeting to represent their call-in. If they're unable to do that, they can provide a written statement. And Councillor Repton has provided that written statement in his absence. That's what the Constitution says.
Just to come back, I feel, so now we're down to a written statement is the reason one's being heard and one isn't, when one that isn't has more objections. I think we're nitpicking. I'll go back to my original point. I think we hear both or we hear neither, in my personal view.
I just come in just to actually read what the Constitution actually says. It says a member of the council, and I think the point is, well, we'll get to it in a few moments, but I think the point is that Councillor Repton had made a written, had said that he had referred the matter to committee and then subsequently said he wanted to rely on his written representation that he had submitted as objection rather than making another written objection. So it says, a member of the council has within 24 days of being sent notification of an application written to the Director of City Growth and Vibrancy requesting its determination by the committee, giving reasons for the request, which I think has been done. Where the member concerned does not attend the meeting in person or submit written representations, the application will be deemed to be determined in accordance with the recommendation of the Director of City Growth and Vibrancy. So I think the subtle difference here, or the difference, is that Councillor Repton has submitted written representations on the point and notified officers that he wouldn't attend, but that he wanted to rely on his previous written representation. That is my understanding of what has happened, Paul. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I think that is the difference. I presume that is the difference between the Councillor Repton's case and Councillor Graves' case.
Matt, do you want to comment?
Thank you. I'm not speaking for Councillor Graves. It doesn't matter which council it is, which ward it is. It's just the principle for me. He has submitted written representation in his objection, hasn't he?
A one-line email.
I think the difference we're struggling with is that the one-line email calling it into committee hasn't been supplemented or responded to when Councillor Graves hasn't come back and said, I'm not coming to committee, please rely on my one-line email. He's just called it into committee and he's not here.
The thing is, in my point of view, if you're going to call in as a councillor, you've got to come to the committee, and I think that should be the be-all and end-all. If any councillor, any of the 51 councillors, if I called one in my ward, yes, I'd be here as chair, but I wouldn't be chair because Councillor Kerr would take my place on that one. But I think that's the whole principle behind this. We are councillors. We can't just say, I do not want this application to be considered. Or I do not agree with this application. You can't just say that in a one-line email and then not turn up to defend what he's saying. The gentlemen here, all applicants, agents or whatever of those particular items, they've turned up, they've taken the time to come and plead their case as such, and thank you for coming, guys. But I can't understand why the councillors haven't turned up.
Yeah. Just on that point, Chair, no, I completely agree, and I think, you know, if a councillor objects, they should be here, if they're the reason that it's been called in. My frustration, I guess, is the point I made earlier around, you know, Councillor Repton submitted a written objection, so a couple of paragraphs more than what Councillor Graves may have submitted, and, you know, why does that justify it being heard and not? But I appreciate both sides. I just think it's a bit farcical, really. The councillors should be here.
I would be more than happy. If the decision does lie with me, I would be more than happy to go for all of those that have been called in. If the councillors haven't turned up, to supplement that by cancelling them all and referring them all back to officers' decisions.
Chair. Sorry, thank you. Where the member, where the member concerned does not attend the meeting in person or submit written representation. So, I think you, I can sympathise with members sort of saying, well, they should be here anyway. But in terms of the Constitution, it does give that either or. So if they have submitted written representations And I think in the case of Councillor Repton, I don't know what detailed representation he made, but he has specifically said, I want to rely on that written rep. And so therefore, I think we'd be in difficulties, I think, to sort of say, well, no, we won't determine that. Now, if a difference would be with Councillor Graves, I don't think we've had communication from Councillor Graves as regards what he wants to do. That's a difficulty here. Now, there is, obviously, it does raise an interesting question for future debate as regards whether we want to change that part of the Constitution, whether we want to say, as you say, you have to turn up to committee. I mean, sort of that may well resolve any issues full stop, or whether you want to say, well, the written rep's got to be detailed enough, although that will be a matter of judgment, won't it? So that the advice I would give is that I think with Councillor Repton, it's borderline, but I think it falls on the side of, well, I would advise hearing the matter tonight because he's probably done sufficient to fit within the Constitution. I think for Councillor Graves, as I say, I don't, unfortunately, well, fortunately, I don't know whichever view you take, he hasn't, I think, and accordingly, I think that the advice from Paul in terms of initially on those applications is I think I would accord with that.
Jenny, do you want to come in? Councillor Kerr.
I think, Chair, that there's clearly a fairly thin line here, and we don't know why any of the councillors aren't here, but we have to presume that they've just not managed their diary very well. But it doesn't take a lot of effort to send an email and say, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to get here tonight. And then there's a certain amount of respect shown to this committee. And without that, then we've got no respect shown to us. And I think we should stand up for ourselves as the committee and to listen to the officer advice that if somebody's apologised and have given us something to listen to, then that's okay. And if they haven't given us the courtesy to say, sorry, I'm not coming, then we don't listen to it.
Thanks, Lucy. Matt, do you want to come in?
I respect your decision, Chair, and there's no disrespect either for Councillor Repton. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. It's just the process. So I think I would welcome, although me personally, I think we should just go ahead and consider them all, but by the by, I think moving forward, as Mr Teasdale said, I think probably clarification and maybe a discussion, because traditionally, if you are a councillor and you put an objection in and call it in, you tend to send that notification, not necessarily unless it's a very large application, detailed submissions, and that's traditionally done verbally. So maybe just to make it clear that some correspondence is going to be needed regardless in advance of actually the statement, 3-minute statement as well. Then it covers all bases. So, yeah, it is what it is. I've said what I've said, and over to you, but I think it definitely would welcome some clarification, some discussion moving forward. So all councillors, 51 councillors, know where they stand.
Yep, happy with that, Matt. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
You can do on that one. Yep. Thank you, Paul. Over to you.
And finally, on 110 Chain Lane, this was called in by Councillor Lonsdale. She's not here. However, it is recommended for refusal and there are 17 letters of support. So that triggers why it's coming to committee in this case. So after all that, and I'm sorry everybody, 25 minutes later, I think to Gladstone Close has been referred back to officers. All the others, and of course the Hollow is off the agenda. The others will be determined hopefully tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I think I've got that. Gladstone Close is off.
Gladstone Close is referred back,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Right, all right. Item 3, declarations of interest. There are none. Oh, sorry, Lucy, I do apologise.
It's not a declaration of interest, but I just want people to know that 110 Chain Lane is in Little Over Ward, and the applicant has asked me for advice, and I've given him process advice about how planning works, where to find out information on the website, and obviously that's been reflected back in the report. But I haven't taken sides on it. I've been interested to read the report.
Thanks, Lucy. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on 2nd of October 2025. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. The went. Item 5, minutes of the meeting, the Conservation Committee. Thank you very much. Appeal decisions. Sarah, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 appeals for members this evening. The first one is a TPO application for 3 Longshore Gardens, which was refused TPO consent for the felling of a hornbeam and lime tree. The inspector agreed with the council's decision. As you can see, the 2 trees are shown on the plan, on the photo, against the fence. The inspector considered that the trees should not be felled, that they have been pruned, as you can see, probably not very well, but that they can be managed by pruning, and both have a significant amenity value and would contribute to the appearance of the surrounding area, so that was dismissed. The next one is 30 Brunswick Close. This one is an appeal against non-determination of the planning application, which basically means we didn't make a decision on the application, and the applicant appealed. It's for a 2-storey rear extension to the dwelling house. The inspector in this case felt that the rear extension was unacceptable. He said, had we issued a decision, it would have been, or he'd issued a decision, it would have been a refusal on the grounds of scale, length, and overbearing impact. It would be considered there would be a loss of amenity to the 2 adjacent residents on either side, and he agreed that the length of the extension would impact on the 45-degree rule for daylight to both of the adjacent dwellings. I think during the life of the appeal, the appellant had offered to reduce the length of the extension and used family reasons to justify the proposal, but the inspector felt he could only consider the submitted proposal and dismiss the appeal. The final one is 42 Breeden Hill Road. This was for a HIMO, an existing HIMO, so it was change of use from a 6-bedroom, 6-occupant housing multiple occupation to a 7-bedroom, 8-occupant HMO. This one, the appeal was allowed. We had issued a refusal of permission. We had concerns about the living environment for the future residents of the first floor room, but the inspector disagreed. He felt the conversion of the first floor study to an additional bedroom would not result in a loss of privacy for either the occupant of that HIMO room or for the neighbours, and he didn't feel that there would be a materially different impact on the neighbouring residents than the existing situation, so he allowed the appeal and also didn't agree that we needed obscure glazing in the side windows. Those are the 3 appeals.
Thanks, Sarah. Item 7, development control performance. Is that you? Sarah again?
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions on the performance, which has been for Q2, July to September.
Any questions, committee? No questions. Got away with it, sir. Ian normally gets loads. Item 8, applications to be considered. We'll move straight on to 8.2, 183 Brighton Road, Derby. Jenny, thank you.
Thank you. So this application is for a change of use from a dwelling house to a 7-bedroom, 7-occupant house in multiple occupation. Thank you, Julia. Together with alterations to the rear roof pitch at 183 Brighton Road, Derby. The property is located in Alveston, within a predominantly residential area that features a variety of housing types and architectural styles. The property itself is a detached 2-storey dwelling situated between number 179 Brighton Road, which is a detached house of similar size and design, and a pair of semi-detached properties at numbers 185 and 187 to the east. The wider streetscape along Brighton Road displays a mix of residential dwellings alongside some commercial and business uses. Within the surrounding area, there are a number of existing licensed HMOs. 3 are known to exist directly opposite the site, 2 of which, numbers 176 and 184 Brighton Road, fall within a 50-metre radius. A further potential HMO at number 166 Brighton Road lies just beyond that range, although there is no formal planning history recorded for this property. The proposal seeks to provide 7 bedrooms for 7 occupants. Following the submission of revised plans, it is confirmed that 5 of the bedrooms would be equipped with individual cooking facilities. Bedrooms 2 and 5 only would share the proposed communal kitchen and living space at ground floor level. A new external access door is now proposed to serve the rear studio unit, identified as bedroom 3. Providing that occupant with independent access and removing the need to pass through the shared communal area. All bedrooms are shown with single beds, and the occupancy level would be formally controlled through planning conditions. In terms of physical alterations, the proposal includes a reduction and redesign of the existing rear roof pitch above bedroom 4. The ridge height would be reduced from 8.1 to 6.7 metres, and the eaves height adjusted from 5.3 to 6.5 metres, representing a total reduction in roof height of approximately 1.4 metres. 2 roof lights are proposed within the rear roof slope to serve the loft studio unit. This development is proposed as a car-free scheme with secure covered storage for 7 bicycles and a waste storage area provided at the rear. Further to questions raised by Councillor Kerr at pre-agenda meeting, the applicant's agent has provided photographic evidence demonstrating that bicycles can access the rear of the property via the existing gated side access. This photograph has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Having carefully considered the details of the proposal, the scheme is considered to be acceptable in terms of highway safety, residential amenity and visual impact. The application has been fully assessed against all relevant planning policies and the concerns raised during public consultation. While a significant number of third-party objections have been received, it is considered that the key material planning issues, including the quality of the accommodation, access arrangements, use of the communal space, and the overall impact on the character of the area, have been appropriately addressed within the report. On balance, the proposal represents a sustainable and efficient use of an existing housing stock within an established urban area. It aligns with the policy objectives of the Derby City Local Plan Part 1 and safe policies of the City of Derby Local Plan Review and the National Planning Policy Framework. These collectively support sustainable development, the effective use of land and the delivery of a range of housing types. Accordingly, it's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. We have one speaker. Mr. Turville, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors and Officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Royce Turville. Together with my wife, we've been managing HMOs professionally across the Midlands for over 10 years. We're a small, family-run business, not a developer, and we take huge pride in delivering high-quality homes for working professionals. 183 Brighton Road is a rundown property. It had holes in the roof and desperately needs investment. Our goal is to transform it into a well-designed, low-density, co-living space that meets modern needs and lifts the appearance and feel of the street. The proposal is for 7 single occupancy bedrooms 5 of which will be self-contained studio-style rooms with their own kitchenettes and bathrooms. The other 2 units are ensuite only, sharing a large, fully compliant communal kitchen used by just 2 people, not the entire household. The scheme includes secure bike storage in the garden, accessed via a lockable side gate, and in our experience, most HMO tenants don't own cars, they rely on public transport and bikes. We manage all our properties personally, from the first inquiry to vetting tenants, choosing household mixes and handling issues. We already manage properties in Derby and across the Midlands, and we know what works in local neighbourhoods. We're also highly selective of who we house. Over the years, we've built respectful, stable households through careful selection process. It's in our interest to get it right because we're the ones that are managing it afterwards. Our management includes dedicated phone line, WhatsApp and email support, online maintenance login, professional cleaning every 2 weeks, quarterly inspections, and if a tenant becomes unsuitable, we act quickly and professionally. We understand concerns about poorly run HMOs, but that's not what we offer. This isn't an overcrowded, absentee landlord setup. It's a small, well-run, high-quality scheme that raises standards, not lowers them. We also want to acknowledge why Article 4 exists, to stop overcrowded, unsightly HMOs that harm neighbourhoods, and rightly so. That type of landlord has had their time. The scheme sets a new standard. We're part of a new generation of landlords who take pride in clean, well-managed homes, ones we'd be happy to live in. Our aim is to enhance communities, not disrupt them. If any concerns arise, the council or councillors can contact us directly. We take full responsibility for every home we manage. I respectfully urge members to follow the recommendations of your professional planning officers who have reviewed the scheme in full and recommended it for approval. We want to be part of the solution, delivering high-quality housing Derby needs and doing it the right way. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr Turver. Thanks very much. Committee. Councillor Kerr.
I'd like to say it's quite refreshing to have somebody expound the importance of HMOs. And I was listening carefully, but I don't remember hearing anything about the landscaping and ensuring that the garden area remains smart and looked after. We learnt during COVID how important outside space is, and I think it's true for this sort of accommodation. So if we could include in the management plan that's already mentioned there to ensure that the outdoor space is looked after, that would be helpful. Probably not something that is needed for this operator, but once it's got its approval, it could move.
Thanks, Lucy. We got a nod of approval then. You're not allowed to speak, so that's very good. So well done. You've done this before. Anyone else? Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was impressed with the Speaker's contribution. I'm sure the residents of Brighton Road fears have been put to bed from the presentation that the gentleman gave in the 3 minutes. I was impressed. And I think we should move the recommendation as printed, obviously with the outdoor space, as Councillor Kerr's just said.
Just got Councillor Holmes, just as you said that. So.
Just hang on a second.
Yes, Matt.
Can I just ask about the no car development? So just get officers to clarify this for me. So we're saying it's a no car dwelling or accommodation. The site doesn't contain off-street parking provision, with residents needing to park any vehicles within the unrestricted on-street parking. So it's kind of contradicting itself there. There's no vehicles, but then it says, but vehicles need to be parked in unrestricted areas on the street. So could you just have clarification on that, please?
Jenny, Andy?
Thank you, Chair. No, sorry, I haven't got the report in front of me. There are no restrictions in this area, so unless there's double yellow lines, I think that's probably what the report means. So there's no resident parking scheme. I think that's what it refers to. So basically, the streets are open for anyone to park with no restrictions. There are issues on the street, but when officers visited after 6 o'clock. There are spaces in other streets and further down the road. So, again, it's one of these, which we've sort of picked up on before about parking. When we look at MPPF and how we have to provide advice to members, particularly in terms of this type of application, that parking isn't considered to be an issue which we consider as part of that advice. It's based on severity, on its sustainable location, and basically on congestion rather than parking. Parking isn't viewed as congestion. I think if it sat in front of an inspector, and the inspector would say that, you know, we've got other powers under the Traffic Management Act to manage that through such things as resident parking schemes and double yellow lines. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Matt, do you want to come back?
Chair. So it's, how is it no cars then? Is that going to be relayed to potential residents to say, oh, by the way, you can't have a car, or it's a no car dwelling? What's the point in putting it in the report if actually it means nothing?
I'm going to throw this over to Mr. Turville. A nod of the head. Is that? Oh, sorry, Andy.
It sounds to me like it's a poor turn of phrase within the report. I think it means no car, as in you know, there's no parking associated with it off street.
Yeah. I thought the speaker said most of his clients rely on public transport and bikes. So, end of story.
Yeah. I think they've just said it was. I think it's how it's phrased in the report, Matt. Yep. All those in favour?
Vice Chair.
Any against? That's carried then. That application is agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Turver. We move now to item 8.4, which is Merchant Street, 23 Merchant Street, Derby. Julia.
Thank you, Chair. So initially, as discussed at the beginning of the meeting, the application has been called in by Councillor Repton, who has asked that we read out his objection as follows. I wish to strongly object to yet another HIMO application in Derby Ward in a street of terraced houses. If planning permission is granted, we will lose another much-needed family home. It will lead to additional bins on street, increased traffic and parking problems, increased noise and generally loss of amenity, as well as a further negative change to the character of the street. For all these reasons, I urge rejection. The application relates to 23 Merchant Street, a two-storey mid-terrace property located on a predominantly residential street just off Ashbourne Road. The property currently has permission to be used as a single dwelling under use class C3. Permission is sought to change the use to a small-scale house and multiple occupation under use class C4 to provide accommodation for up to 4 residents. The proposed residential accommodation would be arranged over 3 floors, including converted loft space served by a rear dormer window, which has been installed under the property's permitted development rights. 4 bedrooms are proposed, each with an ensuite, together with a shared kitchen, living and dining area, and a small rear garden, which would be retained for communal use. The site lies within the recently designated HMO Article 4 direction area, which removes permitted development rights for changes of use from Class C3 to C4. As such, planning permission is now required. The application has attracted 11 objections and 4 letters of support. Objectors raised concerns relating to parking and highway safety issues, increased noise, potential antisocial behaviour, over-concentrations of HMOs in the area, rubbish and bin storage issues, impact on community cohesion and loss of family housing. Supporting comments highlight the application property would provide accommodation for homeless individuals, would make a positive contribution in meeting local housing need, and that there are no perceived parking or antisocial behaviour problems on the street. In terms of the assessment of the planning application, the site is located in a highly sustainable location with good access to public transport, shops and other services. It is therefore in principle a suitable location for use such as this to be sited. While there are clearly other HMOs in the vicinity of the application site, there is no conclusive evidence to suggest that overall numbers in the area would exceed the thresholds set out in the new guidance note on HMOs, or that a change of use would result in any undue harm to character or amenity in the area. Although the change of use may slightly increase the intensity of occupation, the number of residents is limited to 4, which will represent a fairly modest level of use. As a result, the scale of occupation is not expected to generate levels of noise, comings and goings or general activity which would be significantly greater than a typical C3 dwelling. In terms of living standards, all rooms meet the relevant space and amenity standards, and the layout would provide a satisfactory level of accommodation for future occupiers. No objections have been raised by Housing Standard colleagues. In terms of parking and highway safety matters, whilst no off-street parking is provided, the site lies within a controlled parking area with permit holders only restrictions and double yellow lines in place nearby. While residents could still choose to park on nearby unrestricted streets, the additional demand generated by up to 4 occupants is expected to be minimal and unlikely to cause significant impacts on residential amenity or highway operation. The site's highly sustainable location would also reduce the reliance on private motor vehicles. No objections have been raised by the Highways Authority, and overall it's considered that the proposal would not result in unacceptable highway safety or parking impacts. So to summarise, the proposal is considered to represent a small-scale and sustainable form of shared housing that would make a modest but positive contribution to local housing provision. While local concerns are acknowledged, there is no clear evidence to suggest that the proposed change of use would give rise to any significant harm in local character or residential amenity, or that it would lead to a harmful over-concentration of HMOs in the area. In terms of parking, although the property has no dedicated off-street parking provision, the site's sustainable location, proximity to public transport routes and existing parking controls are considered sufficient to prevent any unacceptable highway or parking impacts. On balance, the development is considered to comply with relevant local and national planning policies, and the benefit of providing quality shared accommodation in a sustainable location are judged to outweigh the limited potential adverse impacts. In view of this, it is recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Julia. Committee, any questions? Councillor Kerr.
It's another example of where we haven't got an outdoor management plan beyond looking at bin storage and accessible cycle parking. So, again, can we just put something in to make sure the outside stays decent?
There's a condition for cycle parking.
There's a condition for cycle parking and a condition for bin storage, but not for ensuring that the garden area remains managed.
Thank you, Chair. You'll notice, members, from the title of this report, the proposal is the retention of use of a public garden area and outdoor dining area and event space. You may be more familiar with this site as Electric Daisy. Operating since 2023, it's been very successful activity with increased footfall at the end of Saddlergate, Bold Lane. Its original temporary planning permission expired on the 31st of December 2024, which currently has no permission. I think it's safe to say that the use as a public garden area and outdoor dining area and event space has blossomed considerably, such that in June 2025 a noise abatement notice was served on the use, requiring the operators to stop causing noise nuisance from loud music, which was impacting on both businesses and residential property. You'll notice from the slide that the properties to the rear are the converted Middleton House apartments. I believe the use continued to operate over the summer, failing to comply with the noise notice, so they're in breach. Environmental health comments are in your report on pages 87 through to 91, and you'll note significantly the report, the Environmental Health Officer's comments recommend refusal of the application on noise amenity grounds, given the proximity of the residents to the rear. However, I'm trying to take a more pragmatic approach and suggest a temporary permission for 12 months. This will enable the noisy activity to be relocated, hopefully, to a potentially less sensitive city location. We'll work with the applicants to do that, together with the detailed management conditions to control the noise. There's some really detailed conditions recommended to control the frequency and the duration. I think this successful element of the use has proven to be detrimental to the amenity of nearby occupiers, and we need to take a stand. I think this is the right use, but in the wrong location in this part of the city. And in recognition of the Environmental Health Officer's comments, I want to work with the applicant over the next 12 months to find a more suitable location for their amplified events. Members, in terms of detailed noise concerns, Carl is here. Should you have any more or require any more detailed advice? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Miles.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarity, Paul, on what you just relayed to us there. So, when did they have an initial noise notice served against them, and how long? I'm trying to understand how long it's been since that was initially served and they're still in breach, because by giving them another temporary 12 months, if they've been breaching it already for 12 months, and we're going to say that they could potentially carry on breaching it again for another 12 months if we give them this temporary period of time. I mean, I can't say I've been in here myself. I've walked past it many times going through town on an evening and at a weekend and stuff, and it's always been busy and vibrant, and I've always looked at it and thought that's been a great addition to the area, or it seemed like a great addition. I didn't realise, obviously, there were these noise issues going on. So, yeah, it's a shame, really, just to add that onto my queries towards you. Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. Matt?
Yeah, on that, has the applicant been proactive in terms of trying to resolve this with officers and in terms of noise complaints, you know, or is it always the council going to them to kind of lay down the law, for the want of a better phrase? Just want to try and understand what the dialogue's been that's occurred to this point, if possible.
Carl, can I revert to you for that one? Thanks, Carl. Councillor Kerr first.
Thank you. I've not been to any events here either. The thing that strikes me is 12 months is quite a long time, particularly if you're finding your weekends disturbed. And if Electric Daisy find an alternative venue, I wouldn't want the last 6 months, 9 months of a 12-month temporary to be becoming a problem, a continuing problem, because somebody else has moved into that space. So are we able to limit it to the particular applicant, or does it follow the land use?
We are encouraged by government guidance legislation not to have personal permissions. You can use them on specific circumstances. Specific circumstances might apply to this because it's a very niche operation. Like you say, Councillor Kerr, you don't want somebody else coming in and taking advantage of the operation. Subject to Mr Teasdale saying no, I'd be inclined to go for a personal permission on this, because it is this operator that we, as councillors have said, it's a great use. It's the footfall. It's vibrant, and we need this in the city centre. It's just this is the wrong location, and we just want to send signals out that we want to help to get the use into a better location. Members from your training, you know, I'm always saying planning is about the right development in the right space at the right time. This is just the wrong development. It's in the wrong place, but it's the right development for the city. Let's get it moved to a more appropriate location. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. So I was just looking through the conditions. There are management conditions for the number of events to be held on this. If you look on page 122, no more than 12 events held in a rolling year, no more than 1 event held per weekend, no more than 1 event per month. So I think that's quite a strict. It really, I think if they don't comply to that, it just seems a bit, they're going against everything then, aren't they? You come in first, Matt, but I've got other speakers as well, so yeah.
Are you sure it was in line?
If you go down to the bottom of the list, then that's fine, then yeah. So Councillor Rawson first. Sorry, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's. I suppose the first point to make is, isn't this something that should be being regulated by a licensing committee rather than us at planning? Because we've had many discussions about the operation of the site and being distinct from the land use. So there's that point to make. It does sound as if there are sensible conditions in place. 12 per year is only 1 per month. So I think the issue is probably around working with the applicant to make sure that they're sticking to the conditions rather than anything else. In terms of the location, it is right in the city centre. It's close to very many other bars, pubs, etc., which will be licensed and will be creating, you might call it noise, or you might call it vibrancy, depending on your point of view. So it's in the context of there being very many other noisy venues round and about which are contributing, in my opinion, to the vibrancy and footfall in the city centre. So, you know, whilst there are residential properties round and about, it's the city centre and it is going to be lively, and people who live nearby are going to have to, when they're making their choices to where they want to live, and that's part of the what they've got to weigh up in making that decision. So I support the recommendation to approve, taking into account what Mr Clark said in terms of working with the applicant to bring them into compliance with the existing conditions. And I do think overall it's a great venue. It attracts footfall. It supports what we're trying to do in the city centre in terms of making it more lively and vibrant. And it's just a shame that we don't seem to be in a position where the conditions are being complied with at the moment. But from what Mr Clark said, then it seems there's a willingness in order to do that and to work with the applicant to come back into compliance.
Thanks, Martin. Councillor Bonser, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would support those conditions around the operating times and the frequency of events and so on, and generally support the application. Just a question really, whether the conditions that were there any conditions originally applied, and are they actually in breach of those conditions, or is this sort of incidental noise nuisance? What I'm trying to establish really is whether they're breaching previous conditions. If we're going to put these conditions in place, are the operators likely to be breaching those conditions?
Paul? Through you, Chair. Their planning permission expired. So currently they're not breaching any conditions because they've got no planning permission. They're in breach of planning, technically now.
But were there conditions around time, operation and noise levels?
There were. These are much more bespoke to their activity. As you know, we've got an environmental health objection on noise grounds, but I'm trying to be not much more reasonable, but I'm trying to be reasonable to give them an opportunity to, okay, you can have your activities, but you're restricted to these, and you shouldn't breach these, because if you do, breach a condition, breach a planning permission, Magistrates Court, fine is usually the outcome. The conditions are tailor-made to help us get the applicant to a better location, but also, I think, point was made previously. I think it's a vibrant city centre location, and when you're taking noise assessments, noise readings, you take into account the background noise. So there will be and this is exceeding that. This is way exceeding that. So much so that colleagues are concerned about the excessive noise that's taking place. So, which is why we're here. Amenity issues. We can take that into account in planning. But I think it's reasonable for us to, if you so wish, grant planning permission with those conditions because it allows the operation to continue tightly constrained, but shouldn't breach those conditions that are outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. I think I welcome Paul's comments there. I mean, this is somebody's business. It's obviously providing jobs, and, you know, I would hate to think that we'd be, you know, closing them down in some way by the actions of what we decide. But obviously there are issues to be addressed, and hopefully Paul's got and officers have got the plan to move forward. And I think looking at just a couple of weekends in November, just looked up on their Instagram, and they had a Halloween bunker for you know, from 3:30. So I'm assuming it didn't go into the night, but and then the next day they had a spooky, messy play. So for kids at 12 o'clock till 3 p.m. And then, you know, and so on and so forth, 4 p.m. to 7:30 for an open mic, which may have been noisy, but I don't think the hours are excessive there. And then finally one, which was bring the family along, no fireworks, toasted marshmallows from 4 to 8 p.m. with a little bit of music. Now, I wasn't there, so I don't know how loud that was. So the time seemed to be okay. They would be reasonable, I would have thought. But if there is this issue with excessive noise, then that does need to be resolved, obviously in the interim. But we really do need to work with them to find them a more suitable home if it's not going to be sustainable in terms of the noise impact on those living nearby. But I really wouldn't like to see us contribute to them closing entirely. I think that's definitely something that we need to avoid. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Carl, do you want to come back on that one?
Sure, the committee really, in terms of, there's obviously a number of different kind of events that are taking place in this premises. The noise management strategy that's been submitted quite helpfully categorises the kinds of events into category 1, 2 and 3. The sort of conditions that we're talking about are reflecting the category 1 events, so these kind of nightclub style DJ events. Category 2 and category 3 events, there wouldn't be any restrictions on those, provided they obviously fall within those definitions. So some of the examples given there: cinemas, promotions, exhibitions, trade shows, food festivals, low-key, music elements, where music's sort of incidental to those. There wouldn't be any restriction on those kind of events. We are just talking about the kind of DJ, nightclub kind of stuff. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Carl. We've got now Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really, I was so glad that we've got something like this in the city centre. I work in the city centre on a Saturday, and I know how much footfall this brings. And it's such a good place. And it's not noisy at all. We're in the city centre, we never hear any noise. Bustler's Market down the road, that used to be more noisy than this. And a lot of people, residents, are living near the Bustler's Market than here. And I think it's an excellent place to come in the evening here. And, we were pulling a lot of footfall in there. And I agree with Paul. We should give them another year, see how they get on. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Godfrey. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome the planning officer's recommendations. There's enough places in Derby now. The city centre, some of us my age that have been going downtown 35, probably longer years, it used to be so vibrant, and you had the whole pick of so many clubs, bars and places to go to. But in those days, it did seem a race to the bottom on noise level. And the noisier, and I used to put cotton wool and buds in my ears. I used to really do that. I'd love to see a proactive approach from some of these businesses where they actually do bring the noise level down. You can still have a fantastic night, but now you don't have to spit in somebody's face or use miming. You can speak to them. But it does seem the noise is excessive. And the decibel scale, we all have to remember, it's not linear, it's logarithmic. So if you go up from 85 decibel to 86, you're not just going up one increment. It's, you're on a base 10. You're going up tenfold. So from 85 to 90, you're not just going up 5 increments, it's much more. So I'd like to see where we see a proactive approach with these businesses, and they do bring the noise level down, they really do. And then we can all enjoy it. And I certainly want to promote the city centre. So, yeah, I'm in favour. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I don't know how you did 35 years ago. You must have been drinking. You must have been drinking underage. Councillor Kerr.
And thank you for the clarity about the categories and the table we've got in the papers. But I'm just concerned that when under the management conditions, number 3, C says no more than 1 category event per month. Should that say category 1 event per month? Because otherwise it doesn't really align with what Carl's just told us, in which case we need to make sure that we are clear about what we are approving.
Carl?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, it is. It is, Chair. Yes. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, this establishment is well used and I think is welcomed in the city centre, but I am slightly perturbed by the owners and that they haven't tried to resolve the situation amicably, with the people who do live nearby. I'm not sure I would like it. And the noise levels that we've had explained by the officer and indeed are listed in the report. It's not satisfactory and we ought to do something about it. I support Councillor Rawson when he mentioned the licensing committee, because there is a bar here, so I'm not sure why this hasn't come to licensing committee rather than planning committee, but I'll take the advice of the officer about that. On point 9, page 123 or 101, it says the application has been delayed, allowing the applicant to provide further information. I don't know whether I missed that, but what was the further information that the applicant was going to give us, please?
Through you, Chair. It was additional noise information that they were providing to us to support their application. They wanted a full permission for the uses on the site. Just going back to your question about licensing, I believe, well, this is a planning permission, and licensing would take, assuming it's granted, licensing would take reference to your deliberations and the conditions on the planning permission in granting any licence for the site, I believe. Thank you, Chair. Carl.
Yes, Carl.
Just to expand on that in terms of the licence, there is an
Great. Thanks, Carl. Any others? Move to the vote.
Is that, Chair, is that with the...
I think we talked ourselves out of it because the conditions are so restrictive and so specific, as I think you said, Chair, that there is very little wiggle room left.
Yeah.
Happy, I'm just going to jump in and say I'm happy with that, just to keep to the conditions that are already down in the report. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Mark. Move to the vote then, guys. All those in favour of the application?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, that is. So thank you very much, that's granted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your bits and bobs, Carl, as well. And you, Paul. We move now to item 8.6. 110 Chain Lane, Derby, Littleover. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a variation of condition application for 110 Chain Lane in Littleover. It's for variation of extensions to a detached dwelling house. Approval was approved in 2025, earlier in the year, for extensions to the property. And since then, the applicant has come in with some amendments to that approved set of extensions, which we have concerns about. These are two-storey, the approval and the proposed are two-storey side and rear extensions and alterations to the front canopy and erection of a garden stall. We've received 18 comments in support and a neutral comment for the proposed extensions, which are now proposed, and these include one from Councillor Lonsdale. The amended scheme of extensions would be to the detached house on the north side of Chain Lane, and they comprise of the omission of a first floor setback to the front of the side extension, the addition of a metal canopy to the front elevation to replace the existing tiled canopy, additional vertical timber boarding on the front gable painted black, which would replace the existing mock Tudor boarding on the original house, and alterations to the design of the garden shed. Council's Urban Design Officer has set out his comments, and they are 5.1 in your report, and he has thoroughly considered the amendments in relation to the approved scheme, and he considers the proposed changes to be unacceptable. He notes that the approved extensions granted in early 2025 under the 25-00/2020 pushed the limits of what was deemed acceptable in architectural and urban design grounds. This proposal reverts some of those design elements which were resisted under the previous application and includes removal of the first floor setback. Having regard for the urban designer's comments to the proposed amendments, we consider that the changes to the approved extensions would be harmful to the character and appearance of the dwelling house and to the wider street scene of Chain Lane. So we are recommending refusal for the proposed amendments on the grounds of design, form and appearance, which we feel will be harmful to the character of the dwelling and the wider setting. We have the agent, Ranjit here, is here to speak in support of the application.
Thanks, Sarah. Mr. Sarah, thanks for waiting so long. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, members and officers for hearing this application. Councillor Lonsdale had indicated she would be here tonight to speak on behalf of this, so I hope she is well, but I've not heard why she's not turned up. Very often I'm sat here disagreeing with officers, or agreeing with officers, sorry. So it's the first time I'm disagreeing with an officer a decision or a proposal. And it boils down to aesthetics. And as Sarah's kindly said, you know, it's about appearances, about character, and there are no guidelines for that. There are no statutes for that. There are guidelines. Very much like members in the chamber tonight, you're all politicians. You come from different colours, different colour parties, red, green, blue, etc., orange. But you're all politicians. And the case here is one of aesthetics. The existing house has had approval, and there is a policy, not policy, a guideline that first floor should be set back on side extensions. However, it was brought in many decades ago to stop terracing off semi-detached properties where they did sideways extensions and they became a terrace, which was happening in other parts of the country. So whilst I support the guidelines here, I'm thinking it's not so relevant. There are no houses within 10 metres to the left where we want to omit the setback. The setback is, if you may look, it's only about this much, half a metre. So it's a very small setback, and by omitting it, we do get a front face on the property, which is flat and smooth. So that is what the applicant is grieved about, that he wasn't granted that. This has come in during construction, so construction is paused at the moment, because there have been applications approved and under constructions where sideways extensions have been approved at first floor level, which are flush. And hence, we brought this back for a variation. On the canopy, he is prepared to accept whatever conditions or changes or no changes that can be negotiated. And the frontage, the vertical stripes or the vertical timbers in the front to replace the mock Tudor, again, he is prepared to accept any changes officers or committee may offer, because they were brought in on the back of some feedback from officers that a breaking up of the frontage with the gable end would aid the application if a first floor setback was not to be added. So really, the applicant wants that flush front at the first floor level, and would be happy to accept changes and variations on the gable finish and the canopy. In fact, retaining the canopy as is would be fine as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. Committee. Councillor Bolton just beat you, Councillor Holmes.
I'm a little confused because it says in the report that Councillor Kerr has requested this application be heard at committee, and then Councillor Lonsdale was supposed to speak and hasn't. So, I don't know, I'm confused. Have we got some photographs showing the outside from the street scene? Are there any photographs to show? Right. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, that's as it is now.
Now, yeah.
I understand they may have started works, but that's That's its existing state.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
No, I was going to ask the same question. Did Councillor Kerr send
Councillor
it to committee or not? I suppose.
Councillor Kerr, can you answer this question, please?
I advised the applicant that it was too late for me to ask for it to go to committee because it was well over the 21 days since the application had gone in. But it might well go in if there were more than 15 people in support, which is what they then sorted out. And I'm not quite sure why it's come down. It's been reported quite as it has in the papers. I was going to say, Chair, though, that the applicant explained to me that one of the things he liked was to have symmetry. And although the house is not entirely symmetrical, he's built on about an extra metre on the right-hand side in the top picture there, so that the roof length either side of the peak becomes symmetrical, which seemed to me to be a really expensive thing to be doing. But if you have an aesthetic that says you want to have a balance left and right, then that was the way to achieve it and still achieve a garage that was large enough for whatever his vehicle is. As has been stated, the detailing of the coverage of the two bays and the cladding feature on the centre, he's very happy to have conditioned and to finalise that later.
Sorry, I was just using a homemade scale rule. I do apologise. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I think I agree with the planning officers here. I don't like to see a big, huge, flat face, certainly onto the street scene. It needs to be broken up. And in context of a property like that looks like a 1930s detached property in its own grounds, it's completely changing it. So with the garage aspect and the extension above there being set back, even if it is only a metre, it significantly changes the look and view. So no, I think the planning is correct on this one, and I'll support the officers. Thank you.
You can, Paul.
Can we go to the approved elevations? So those elevations have approval, and the canopy across the front and the extension over the garage is set back. So that setback creates that shadow. It's a slight bit of relief, but it creates the shadow. So that's the applicant's fallback position. What the applicant wants to do, next slide please, is that, and that just, I wouldn't want to put my name to that in terms of its elongated appearance. It all sort of stretches the bulk of the, and when you see it, I've got this site plan in front of me, when you see the site plan, it's on a corner. And so the property doesn't turn the corner in design terms, it's just a block. So that's why I think we've gone down the route of having that setback. It's not for a terracing issue, but it's to help, in design terms, turn the corner. It's a slight relief, but it's the relief that's needed to help this scheme get developed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Committee. Any others? All those in favour of the recommendation, which is to refuse. Any against the 6-1? So that application is refused and it goes with the officer's recommendation. So thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your longevity in staying the night. You make good councillors, you are. So thank you. So we move on now to item 9, potential future site visits. Over to you again, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've got 4 majors for you tonight. This one is a site, a former factory site at Harrington Street in Normanton, demolition of the existing building and erection of 4-storey apartment building on the site. quite a narrow, small sign.
Obviously, we can see that from the road, can't we? So, yeah.
Yeah. This one you'll be familiar with. This is Infinity Park. This is just for a variation of condition to the outline permission to allow occupation of a new unit before the A50 link road is completed. So it's a condition rather than new development.
Yeah, fine with that one.
This one is one of our new housing applications in outline for Moorway Lane and Clover. All matters reserved, up to 350 dwellings and local sector.
You can see it.
Yeah, you can see it from the road.
Yes. Yep.
Millennium Wood. Final one. Again, you're probably familiar with this one. It's Castle Ward, latest phase 5, 167 dwellings on various plots. Again, you can see it from Castle Ward.
Yeah, fine on that one. Yep.
That's it.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah. You can make an announcement, Mr. Clark.
Part of our training session next time, we have just taken hold of our 3D model, which is for the city centre, which is remarkable. It is stunning. And what I'd like to do at the next training session before our committee on the 11th is run through that model, fingers crossed, with members. So it's an advance warning, 5 o'clock, usual place, to go hopefully have a play with the model, which is really, really good. And then we can use it in planning committee meetings and in pre-application discussions, etc., etc. I'll say no more.
Thank you, Paul. I'd just like to say as well, just backing up that, I'd enjoy the training bits and bobs that we do, Paul, and I think there's 2 or 3 others that regularly turn up. So I would encourage it to everybody, if you could please, if you can get on time. So thank you very much. Until then, thank you very much for tonight. Very good discussion. Sorry it started later, but these things we had to do. So thank you very much, everybody. See you on the 11th of December. Thank you, officers, as well. Thank you very much.